Let's take a look at characters who died in horror movies, even though their deaths were unwarranted. All genres have tropes that are common. The superhero genre has the relative who dies and departs some wisdom to the protagonist, from Glenn Ford's Jonathan Kent, who told Clark that, "You are here for a reason," just before he keeled over from a heart attack, to Cliff Robertson's Uncle Ben, and his parting words to Peter Parker, "With great power comes great responsibility," then he died in his nephew's arms. Then we come to horror movie tropes, such as the emotionally fragile, grieving protagonist who may or may not have just been released from a mental asylum, and finds themselves isolated in a countryside house which may or may not be haunted. Speaking of mental asylums, a mental patient escapes on the anniversary of the crime they committed. So convenient. And the most common trope is the victim who runs upstairs instead of out the door. You know they're goners. The movies presented in this volume are unique. Some of them follow horror tropes to the letter, others go against the grain and actually have the victim run out of the house, giving you the idea that they just might escape. No. Not gonna happen. Let's take a look at characters who didn't need to die. Number 10, Nancy Thompson from A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. Back in the 80s and early 90s, the battle against Freddy Krueger was never-ending. In A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Nancy returned to the franchise in one last effort against Freddy. She and her allies had the plan to defeat him, all while Nancy and the Dream Warriors faced Krueger on his turf. In the battle's final moments, Nancy's father appeared to her in a final goodbye before crossing into the afterlife. But of course, it wasn't him. Having faced Freddy before, Nancy more than anyone should have known not to trust anything she sees in a dream, and yet she still fell for Freddy's ruse. Freddy stabbed her, but she was able to stay alive long enough to help finish the fiend off. Nancy didn't need to die, though. It was a rookie mistake on her part to fall for such a simple trick. Unfortunately, it was normal for characters to die because of silly mistakes in this era. Number 9, Ben, from 1968's Night of the Living Dead. Romero's Night of the Living Dead still holds up today as a zombie classic thanks to some groundbreaking aspects. One of those aspects is the character of Ben, an African-American man who becomes the hero of the story, which was quite unheard of in Hollywood at the time. However, that makes Ben's end all the more tragic. As the sun rises in the aftermath of the zombie outbreak, Ben emerges from the basement, having survived, only to be shot by a member of the local vigilante group. One Redditor admitted they appreciated it was a fantastic ending and very symbolic, but still found it hard to accept. While there are a lot of memorable dino death scenes in the Jurassic Park franchise, Zara's death in Jurassic World is remembered as one of the most mean-spirited. Zara has a small supporting role as Claire's assistant who is tasked with looking after her nephews. Despite losing the boys when they go off to explore the park, Zara doesn't do anything to deserve a brutal end. But as she is repeatedly attacked by flying dinosaurs and then dropped into the water only to be eaten by a mosasaurus, Redditor Eternal Intalio called it an overly drawn-out and painful death for that poor girl. Number 7, Mr. Halloran, The Shining from 1980. There are a number of powerful Stephen King characters who can shine, but Mr. Halloran from The Shining is one of the most likable. He shares the same connection with young Danny Torrance and comes to the young boy's rescue when his father turns murderous. But despite having the best of intentions, Halloran proves to be an ineffective savior as he is almost immediately killed by Jack Torrance. Redditor Traplord Eskeetit found it tragic how much effort he puts into getting back to the hotel, just to get axed. Number 6, Jenny from Eden Lake. Eden Lake is the kind of unsettlingly realistic horror movie that feels like it could actually happen. It follows a couple who are attempting to have a relaxing day at a secluded lake only to be harassed by some local kids who turn more violent when the couple pushes back. After watching her husband be killed by these young menaces, Jenny manages to make it to a nearby home. But her supposed saviors turn out to be the parents of the young killers who proceed to kill Jenny to protect their kids. Redditor Oxieko admitted that it is an ending I have to change in my mind, otherwise I can't sleep at night. Number 5, The Ain't Rights from Green Room. Green Room follows a punk rock band called The Ain't Rights. While their music might sound aggressive, they are a group of very likable and charming friends who find themselves in a dangerous situation after playing a show at a neo-Nazi camp. Another grounded horror movie, the main characters are surrounded by enemies and picked off in brutal fashion. The fact that the audience gets to know and like these young characters before seeing them so senselessly slaughtered makes the whole thing way more horrific, according to Redditor 3 Froggy and Problem. Number 4, Dr. Susan McAllister from Deep Blue Sea. Deep Blue Sea was a wildly ridiculous movie full of bad acting and even worse logic. The film takes place in a remote underwater facility built to study genetically engineered sharks. As it's wont to happen, said sharks get loose and go on a killing spree throughout the lab, gradually filling with water. By the end, there are only 3 survivors, one of whom is the head scientist, Susan. To prevent a shark from escaping the facility, Susan gets the bright idea to distract it by cutting her hand and jumping into the water at the cost of her own life. Her sacrifice was not necessary, though. Perhaps a few drops of blood in the water would have sufficed, as the beast is attracted to blood. Then again, her death was spectacular, which is about as much as any horror fan wants out of a so bad it's good shark movie such as this. Number 3, Tara Hayes from Terrifier. Speaking of silly mistakes, Terrifier was the indie killer clown horror that took the genre by storm in 2016. It was an homage to old-school horror and grindhouse that was a trifecta of fun, scary, and outright stomach-churning. But in being an homage to classic horror, one central character made the mistake of running rather than finishing the job one too many times. As she is being chased around an abandoned warehouse by Art the Clown, Tara catches the killer off guard a few times. Each time, she bludgeons Art with blunt objects, but runs away after one hit. The last instance sees her hit Art with a piece of wood before running off to grab another object to fight him. Too bad for her, the quietly giggling clown is the most practical person in the room and shoots Tara with a concealed gun. Most characters on this list don't deserve the fates they met in their respective movies, but it's safe to say that Tara bought hers with her stupidity. Number 2, The College Kids from Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. Tucker and Dale vs. Evil is one of those movies that turns the horror genre on its head in a bloody fun way. Getting mistaken for murderous rednecks, Dale and Tucker find themselves in a precarious position when a group of college students continuously fall victim to a series of gruesome mishaps. Depending on what side of this conflict one finds themselves on, it very much looks like a basic slasher with brutal kills and vicious butchers. But the other side shows a hilarious Final Destination-esque case of mistaken identity when everyone who encounters the bumbling backwoods duo accidentally kills themselves in ways resembling murders by Jason Voorhees or Leatherface. As fun as this movie is, most of the lives lost here could have been avoided if the college kids had not assumed the worst about a couple of harmless idiots. Number 1, Everyone from The Descent. To be fair, every death in The Descent is technically the fault of the naivete of one character in particular. A year after an unfortunate tragedy, a group of thrill-seeking friends reunites for a spelunking adventure through a cave in the Appalachian Mountains. Things go well to start, but then the cave collapses behind them, trapping them inside. No one panics at first because they think there is a way out, but then Juno confesses that she led them into an unexplored cave. Maybe they could have found a way out and survived, but Juno proves herself to be twice the fool when the cave is revealed to be home to dozens of humanoid mutant creatures that set about attacking the group, ripping them to shreds. This is why ambition can be toxic. It's all fun and games until the cave creatures attack. That was our show for today. What did you think? Did any of these characters deserve to die? Should some of them have survived? Let me know in the comments section below. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, leave a like, also check out my Carl Vincent, Vampire Hunter franchise in the links below. Until next time, this is Kevin Gibbons saying live long and prosper, may the force be with you, and keep reaching for the stars.